A joint hearing on the security threats posed by drones or unmanned aerial systems. Officials from Customs and Border Protection, the FBI, and the Justice Department were among those who testified. They talk about the recent unexplained drone activity happening near sensitive sites in New Jersey. The hearing is 2 hours.
Committee on Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Counterterrorism Law Enforcement and Intelligence, and the Subcommittee on Transportation and Maritime Security will come to order. Without objection, the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Malliotakis, and the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Smith, are permitted to sit on the dais and ask questions of the witnesses. The purpose of this hearing is to receive testimony from expert witnesses from the federal government and as well as the private sector about the growing threat of unmanned aerial systems, more commonly known as UASs or drones. We will hear from two panels today, and our first panel consists of 3 witnesses from the federal government. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to today's important hearing on the threats posed by unmanned aircraft or aerial systems, UASs or drones, and the threat to U.S. national security and the policy solutions that could mitigate these risks. Before we begin, I'd like to personally recognize 2 individuals, Congressman Dan Bishop and Congressman Anthony D'Esposito, for their service to the subcommittee and to our nation, and I wish them well in their future endeavors. As we sit here today, we are at a critical juncture in the evolution of military technology, commercial innovation, and cybersecurity. UASs have become a transformative force. They've been used in countless positive ways that include revolutionizing many industries like agriculture, logistics, film production, and others, while also improving capabilities for humanitarian relief and law enforcement. However, as with any powerful technology, UAS have also introduced significant security challenges. In recent years, the proliferation of UAS, both domestically and abroad, has raised serious concerns regarding the potential misuse and criminal activities, espionage, and more alarmingly, in threats to U.S. national security. From foreign adversaries seeking to exploit UAS for surveillance and intelligence gathering, to the growing risk of UAS being weaponized to attack critical infrastructure, sports stadiums, our vulnerabilities are clear. The risk posed by commercial and military-grade UAS in the hands of rogue states, non-state actors, terrorist organizations, and even individuals cannot be overstated. There have already been several troubling incidents where UAS have been used to penetrate airspace, compromising not only our national security but public safety. Threats to our homeland can also derive from the manufacturing of products that Americans frequently use. A glaring example is the widespread use of drones manufactured by Dajiang Innovations, DJI, a Chinese company whose products are deeply embedded in U.S. industries and critical sectors. These systems raise national security concerns, including risk of unauthorized data access and systemic vulnerabilities. Multiple U.S. departments and agencies have already admonished against or banned the procurement of certain UAS originating in the People's Republic of China in recognitions of the threats that they pose. Just this past October, reports indicated that CBP is blocking the importation of some UAS produced by DJI due to potential violations of the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which is a law that prohibits the importation of goods into the U.S. produced in whole or in part with forced labor out of the PRC. We must work to protect U.S. communications equipment while strengthening U.S. supply chains by ensuring foreign manufactured technologies that pose security threats cannot operate in U.S. networks. The threats posed by UAS continues to present challenges. The U.S. border is one of the most significant vulnerabilities when it comes to this type of threat. UAS have already been used to circumvent traditional border security measures such as fences, walls, and surveillance towers. UAS have been used to smuggle drugs and weapons across the border and surveil CBP locations for human smugglers to then evade detection. CBP officials have consistently raised concerns that Mexican narco-terrorist gangs are using weaponized UAS only a short distance from the U.S. border, and in many cases operating inside the United States. UAS also pose a significant threat to critical infrastructure, including power grids, oil refineries, airports, water treatment plants, and transportation systems. A single UAS carrying explosives could potentially cause widespread damage, interrupt services, and result in significant economic loss to our homeland. Additionally, recent events illustrate the diverse roles UAS have played in both state-on-state conflict and asymmetric engagements, such as those in Ukraine and Israel, as well as their use in potential intelligence gathering operations near sensitive military installations at home and abroad. We must learn from these conflicts to help protect our homeland security. DHS and DOJ were given counter-UHS authorities as part of the Preventing Emerging Threats Act of 2018, which became law as part of the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018. The current authorities provided under the Act are set to expire on December 20th, 2024, just 1 week from now. Over the past years, DHS and DOJ have used these authorities to engage in activities to protect covered facilities and assets against credible threats posed by UAS, notwithstanding laws such as the Wiretap Act or the Aircraft Sabotage Act that could otherwise limit such activities. It's imperative that we not only make sure that the current authorities are extended to protect our national security, but also work together to responsibly reform the current legal authorities that provide federal agencies with critical tools to mitigate credible threats posed by UAS. I'd like to applaud Chairman Green as well as Ranking Member Thompson for their bipartisan work alongside members on T&I and Judiciary for introducing H.R. 8610, the Counter-UAS Authority Security, Safety, and Reauthorization Act of 2024. This legislation will renew and reform current counter-UAS legal authorities. The legislation will also modify and improve counter-UAS authorities of the Federal Aviation Administration, enhance important protections for the civil liberties of Americans using UAS in a legal and responsible manner, and strengthen public safety in communities throughout this nation. For instance, the legislation requires DHS to establish a counter-UAS mitigation pilot program under which selected state and covered law enforcement agencies may operate approved counter-UAS mitigation systems and mitigate unauthorized UAS operations on behalf of covered entities at a number of sites each. Today, we're going to hear from experts in the fields of national security, law enforcement, defense, and technology who will provide insights into the threats posed by the UAS and family of systems to our homeland and efforts to address these challenges. And I just want to say, if you're watching the news today, we've had several incidents that have occurred and are occurring right now in places like New Jersey. Recently, we had an incident at Langley Air Force Base. The threat is real. This hearing, I think, will address many topics. Maybe we don't have all the answers that come out of this hearing, but my hope is that by having this hearing, by asking both the government and non-governmental panel, that we can get to the right questions, and we can, if we don't have the right policies in place, then let's get those policies in place. If we do, and the authorities are there, then let's figure out what we can continue to do to keep our homeland safe. There's many aspects of this, but the most important aspect is the safety and the security of every American citizen and the life that we live here. I look forward to hearing from our distinguished panels today and working in a bipartisan manner. I now recognize the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Law Enforcement, and Intelligence, the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner, for his opening statement.
Well, I thank Chairman Pfluger for calling this important hearing and all of my colleagues for participating. The proliferation of unmanned aircraft systems has created a technological arms race between criminals who use UAS technology to plot acts of terror, traffic fentanyl and other illegal substances, and invade the privacy of ordinary Americans, and law enforcement agencies tasked with keeping our homeland safe. Both the criminals and law enforcement agencies are innovating at a rapid rate, and it is important that the federal government keep up. The time has come for Congress to expand the authority of federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies to better utilize monitoring, tracking, and signal jamming technologies to protect critical areas, including our borders, large public events, prisons, and sensitive government facilities, while also ensuring the civil liberties of drone operators. This is the goal of H.R. 8610, the Counter-UAS Authority Security, Safety, and Reauthorization Act, authored by Chairman Green and Ranking Member Thompson, which I am proud to have co-sponsored. For years, DHS, DOJ, and other agencies have briefed this committee on the threats posed by malicious and authorized UAS. We have seen drones shot down at airports in this country and around the world. Major sporting events have been interrupted with players rushed from the field when unauthorized drones with unknown motives entered restricted airspace. And just a few weeks ago, the FBI arrested a white supremacist in Tennessee who planned to use a drone with an explosive payload to attack a power grid. However, it must also be said that drones are useful tools for many occupations and hobbyists. They can be useful for search and rescue, navigation, agriculture, and more. And these positive aspects remind us that we must take a measured approach to the issue. I look forward to hearing from today's witnesses about how best to balance the benefits and risks of UAS. Moreover, I hope that this hearing will help lay additional groundwork for getting H.R. 8610 over the finish line. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. The chair now recognizes the chairman of the Subcommittee on Transportation and Maritime Security, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Jimenez, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today we're examining the growing threats posed by unmanned aerial systems, UASs, or drones, and exploring solutions to better protect our homeland from this evolving technology. The popularity and accessibility of drones have skyrocketed in recent years. Today, there are more than 880,000 registered drone operators in the United States, with countless other operating drones without proper registration or training. While many of these operators use drones for legitimate purposes, recreational, commercial, or otherwise, there is an undeniable threat from those who misuse this technology either through ignorance of the rules and regulations or with malicious intent. Uninformed operators can inadvertently disrupt air traffic or encroach on sensitive areas, creating safety risks that strain our law enforcement and the aviation systems. While uninformed operators present a risk, their potential impact is negligible compared to the dangers posed by nefarious actors with malicious intent. Nefarious actors, including transnational criminal organizations, terrorists, and foreign adversaries, can exploit drones to evade traditional security measures, gather intelligence, smuggle contraband, disrupt transportation systems, or even launch attacks on our homeland. The threat from nefarious actors is both real and escalating. Along our borders, drones are increasingly employed by cartels to smuggle drugs and surveil law enforcement operations. We must consider all appropriate actions to ensure that foreign adversaries like the Chinese Communist Party are not using drones under the guise of legitimate activities to relay sensitive information back to China or other entities that seek to harm the United States. Critical infrastructure, such as airports, power plants, and ports, face growing risks from rogue drones capable of conducting surveillance, causing disruptions, or carrying out acts of sabotage. These risks are not hypothetical. Since 2021, the Transportation Security Administration has documented nearly 2,000 drone sightings near U.S. airports, with major airports experiencing drone incursions almost daily. Furthermore, between 2021 and 2022, the FBI reported 235 incidents of suspicious drone flights at or near chemical plants in Louisiana. Similar UAS activity is also observed at oil storage facilities in Oklahoma and natural gas facilities in Texas, highlighting the growing threat to critical energy infrastructure. Beyond our borders, the conflict in Ukraine has highlighted the weaponization of drones in modern warfare. Both sides have employed drones for reconnaissance, targeting, and direct attacks, underscoring the ability to use drones to transform the dynamics of conflict. These lessons, both from domestic incidents and international conflicts, should serve as a wake-up call for us to bolster our defenses against the misuse of drones within the United States. Looking ahead, the stakes will only continue to rise, with major global events such as the 2026 FIFA World Cup, of which many games will be played in my hometown of Miami, and the 2028 Summer Olympics coming to the United States. We must be ready to confront these threats to safeguard critical infrastructure and ensure the safety of travelers, participants, and spectators. We have a responsibility to defend against drone threats, and the need for action is clear. We must act swiftly. Today's hearing is an opportunity to better understand the full scope of the challenges posed by drones and to explore innovative solutions to mitigate these risks. I want to thank my colleague from Texas, Representative Pfluger, as well as my colleagues from the Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Law Enforcement, and Intelligence for partnering with us to host this important hearing. Thank you to our witnesses, Deputy Executive Assistant Commissioner Jones, Deputy Assistant Attorney General Wiegman, and Assistant Director Wheeler for appearing before the subcommittees. I look forward to hearing about how we can better counter rogue drones, safeguard critical infrastructure, and ensure our policies keep pace with this evolving technology, and I yield back.
The Chair now recognizes the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Transportation and Maritime Security, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Tanadar, for his opening statement.
Good afternoon, and thank you to both Chairman and Ranking Member Magaziner for holding today's hearing, as well as to our witnesses for joining us. Over the past few years, the use of unmanned aerial systems, also known as drones, has become common across a wide range of applications. Drones have become increasingly affordable and useful within agriculture, law enforcement, search and rescue, photography, and other industries. However, as the airspace becomes more and more crowded with unmanned aircraft, we must ensure the government is prepared and empowered to protect the safety and security of U.S. critical infrastructure and the American public. In 2018, Congress enacted initial authorities for the executive branch to begin testing and operating counter-drone technologies, also known as CUAS technologies. Those authorities have kickstarted the interagency coordination and technology development needed to carry out such a complex effort, but the authorities remain unlimited. Authorities remain limited and have relied on one short-term extension after another. I hope Congress will act early next year to advance legislation to extend and expand these authorities. As we do so, we must ensure the government's counter-drone activities appropriately protect privacy and civil liberties and do not have unintended impacts on the safety of the national airspace. As ranking member of the Transportation and Maritime Security Subcommittee, I am especially interested in making sure airports are protected from threats posed by drones. Already, we have seen major airports shut down due to errant drones causing significant delays. Introducing new technologies that affect radio signals is especially sensitive within the airport environment and other urban environment. So we must ensure such technologies are carefully tested. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about how Congress can push our counter-drone efforts into a new phase in a measured yet meaningful manner. Again, I thank our witnesses and my colleagues, and I yield back.
Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. I'm pleased to have a distinguished panel of witnesses before us today on this very important topic, and I ask that our witnesses please rise and raise their right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before the Committee on Homeland Security of the United States House of Representatives will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. Thank you. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. I'll now introduce the witnesses. Mr. Keith Jones is the Deputy Executive Assistant Commissioner for Air and Marine Operations. He has over 32 years of law enforcement experience. Notably, he has helped found the San Diego sector's Border Patrol Search, Trauma, and Rescue Team and was the principal primary driver of its national expansion. Mr. Robert Wheeler Jr. serves as the Assistant Director of the FBI's Critical Incident Response Group. His responsibilities include providing expertise in crisis management, negotiations, hazardous devices and tactical operations, behavioral assessment, surveillance, and aviation. He joined the division in July of this year. And Mr. Bragg Wiegman serves as the Deputy Assistant Attorney General for National Security at the U.S. Department of Justice. He has spent his career as a government attorney with legal experience at the Department of Defense, Department of State, and at the National Security Council. We thank all of you for being here today. We will now begin with opening statements. I know that you have submitted written statements as well, and thank you for that. And if you'll please adhere to the 5-minute summary of your statements. We'll start with Mr. Jones. You're now recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman Pfluger, Ranking Member Magaziner, Chairman Jimenez, and Ranking Member Tanadar, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. It's an honor here to be here today on behalf of U.S. Customs and Border Protection to discuss the CBP authorities and capabilities dedicated to countering threats posed by the malicious use of unmanned aircraft systems, commonly called UAS or drones. Throughout my 33-year career in border security, first with the U.S. Border Patrol and now Air and Marine Operations, I've witnessed transnational criminal organizations, or TCOs, and other malicious actors leveraging technology to circumvent U.S. law enforcement. In recent years, I've devoted significant time to understanding the increasing UAS threat to border security and coordinating CBP's strategic response. Air and Marine Operations is CBP's executive agent for counter-UAS operations. We work alongside our U.S. Border Patrol and Office of Field Operation counterparts to detect, track, and mitigate the threat of these aircraft along our borders. We also collaborate with our DOJ and FBI partners on investigations, as well as CBP Innovation, the DHS Science and Technology Directorate, Department of Defense, private industry, to identify technologies that can improve our mitigation and domain awareness capabilities. I'd like to emphasize three important aspects of this subject today. First, the current state of UAS threats to border security. Second, how our critical authorities enable us to respond. And finally, the importance of improving CBP's domain awareness capabilities and technology to detect and mitigate UAS threats. First, UAS activity along the border is increasing rapidly. During a recent 6-week period, CBP sensors recorded more than 6,900 drone flights within close proximity of our borders. It is these flights, particularly those in areas of high illicit activity, that present the greatest threat to the safety of CBP's frontline personnel, pose a serious collision risk to our crewed aircraft, and diminish the effectiveness of our border security operations. Although intent cannot be derived from border proximity alone, through our intelligence processes, CBP has associated a large percent of these drone flights with nefarious activities on the ground. TCOs have fully integrated UAS technology into their operations. Of most concern to CBP is the wide use of drones to conduct reconnaissance of CBP law enforcement personnel, their locations, and their activities. This technology enables smugglers to guide non-citizens or transport contraband across the border without encountering any law enforcement. Additionally, to a lesser extent, TCOs have used drones to fly contraband over the border. And most drones have limited payload capacity. An average recreational drone can carry only a few pounds, but the potential risk is still significant. A few pounds of narcotics, specifically fentanyl, or a few pounds of explosives could cause serious harm. The increasing use of UAS brings me to my second point. The authorities provided by Congress through the Preventing Emerging Threats Act are essential for CBP to detect and counter this serious threat. In accordance with the Act, DHS policy guidance and internal policy, CBP conducts counter-UAS operations in 10 high-risk sectors along the southwest and northern border, as authorized by the DHS Secretary. Our operations target specific threats to covered facilities or assets while safeguarding privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties. Obtaining authorization to implement counter-UAS operations is a rigorous and precise process. It requires a credible threat determination based on extensive analysis and evidence, as well as correlation with actionable law enforcement information. Using our authorities and targeted approach, CBP mitigated 86 UAS threats at the border in fiscal year 2023 and 60 in FY24. CBP also mitigated 16 UAS as Special Event Assessment Rating, or SEER, events in FY 2023 and 49 in FY24. CBP has mitigated 3 unmanned aircraft systems so far in FY 25. Finally, TCOs are rapidly obtaining larger, more maneuverable drones with a higher capacity for payloads and the ability to fly longer, higher, and farther. We're also tracking the threat of drones used for kinetic attacks with payloads of explosives, firearms, or weapons of mass destruction. We're already seeing drug cartels in Mexico use drones to attack the military, police, and their rivals. This means CBP needs these critical authorities, advanced technology to maintain the strategic advantage and continued commitment to achieving persistent domain awareness. CBP is dedicated to our security mission, and with your support, we will continue to counter this rapidly evolving threat and expand our risk-based implementation of counter-UAS operations along the border. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. The chair now recognizes Mr. Wheeler for his opening statement of 5 minutes.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chairman Pfluger, Chairman Jimenez, Ranking Member Magaziner, and Ranking Member Tanadar. other distinguished members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to testify on behalf of the FBI. I currently serve as the Assistant Director of our Critical Incident Response Group in Quantico, Virginia. I've done that since July, as you've mentioned. In that capacity, I lead the FBI's efforts regarding both our pre-crisis planning and response to critical incidents and major investigations, which includes responsibility for our counter-unmanned aircraft program. As UAS use continues to rapidly grow among the public, commercial, and military and law enforcement sectors, this technology also lends itself to increased malicious use by state, non-state, and lone actors, as you know. This technology poses some unique security challenges for us. Just this year alone, we've seen concerning increase in the use of UAS in the commission of crimes with the intent to cause injury to U.S. persons on U.S. soil. A Chinese national recently pled guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts for using a UAS to conduct espionage at a U.S. naval facility in January. We believe UAS are being flown for similar purposes over sensitive facilities across the United States. Just last month, the subject was arrested and charged in Tennessee for attempting to use a UAS with an explosive device to destroy an energy facility. That is the same case mentioned by the ranking member. That subject was driven by an ideology to disrupt society through the collapse of the national power grid. Those are 2 examples of the evolving ways that UAS are being used to harm us and our interests. With the enactment of the 2018 Preventing Emergency Threats Act, the FBI was granted the authority necessary to mitigate a range of UAS threats in the protection of special events, emergency response, federal investigations, personnel, and facilities. Specifically, the legislation authorizes DOJ and our partners at DHS to conduct counter-UAS operations in limited circumstances to identify, track, and mitigate credible threats. I'd stress the importance for reauthorization of the counter-UAS authorities, as you know, expire December 20th. Failure to extend the authorities beyond then would cause significant impacts on our ability to protect the public. A durable extension is also extremely important. Our experience has taught us that short-term extensions to counter-UAS authority effectively prevent the Bureau and our partners from budgeting and staffing in ways which would allow us to execute a long-term strategy. We know that Congress is considering extensions of 5 years or more, and we thank you for that consideration. The FBI strongly supports pursuing expanded counter-UAS authorities for state, local, tribal, and territorial partners as robustly and swiftly as prudently possible. SLTT partners have repeatedly informed us that existing counter-UAS authorities are inadequate. Since our counter-UAS authority was granted in 2019, the FBI has adopted 69 operational missions using this authority and provided limited support to 121 other events. We've detected over 1,000 UAS in violation of federal law during these missions. One example, at the Boston Marathon this past April, our team mitigated a UAS threat, which resulted in the capture and prosecution of a subject. The FBI cannot alone protect the over 40,000 Special Event Assessment Rating, or SEER, events annually held in the U.S., along with the countless other requests for counter-UAS support at mass gatherings. The use of counter-UAS to protect against these situations is crucial and can only be fully addressed by expanding the capability to include our state and local partners. In closing, we remain committed to protecting Americans by countering the malicious use of this technology. The reauthorization or long-term extension of this legislation is essential to continue our mission in combating the evolving threat. And we look forward to working with you in establishing sustainable strategies to mitigate the threat going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. The chair now recognizes Mr. Weigman for his opening statement of 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Pfluger, Chairman Jimenez, Ranking Member Magaziner, Ranking Member Tanadar, and other distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the Department of Justice. As my colleagues have just said, we are committed to continuing to work hard to protect the American people from the threat of illicit drone use. But to do so most effectively, we need additional legal authority. As drones become more and more prevalent in our airspace, merely continuing with our current authorities is insufficient to address the current scale of the threat. More than 2 years ago, I and others from DHS and the FAA testified before a Senate committee about this growing threat and the need for a more durable and significantly expanded legal framework. Since that time, the Congress has provided extensions of existing counter-drone authority while considering how best to expand it. We are very grateful that both the House and the Senate continue to agree that this authority must not lapse. The Department is eager to share with you the lessons gained from our experience to help reach consensus about how much and in what way to expand the existing law. Now, the reason we need legal authority is that without it, use of the most effective types of drone detection and counter-drone technologies could violate criminal laws, including those that prohibit destroying or disabling aircraft in flight and intercepting signals and communications. As has just been said, our current authorities will lapse within the next 10 days unless reauthorized. So our first priority is for Congress to reauthorize the existing law. But I know that this committee and others have also been working on legislation to go well beyond that, and we are eager to work with Congress on a bill that will help keep the American people safe. Now, as described in our written testimony, the two most important issues for us are, number one, broadening the types of sites that law enforcement can protect from nefarious and suspicious drone uses. So, for example, to cover, as was mentioned in the opening statements, airports and critical infrastructure like power plants and chemical facilities. So we need to expand the types of sites that can be protected. And then number two, as my colleague from the FBI just mentioned, it's about empowering state and local law enforcement and operators of critical infrastructure to engage in counter-drone efforts themselves nationwide. This is not a job the federal government can do alone. The FBI can only cover a tiny fraction, less than half of 1%, of the tens of thousands of events throughout the country each year that might need counter-drone support to protect public safety. So the demand for protection across the country just vastly exceeds available federal resources. To be clear, this activity can and must be done while safeguarding Americans' privacy and civil liberties. The technologies that we employ typically detect only communications being passed between the operator's controller and the drone to detect its activities, to direct its activities. They do not extract text messages, email, or internet search histories from phones or tablets used to control drones, nor do they allow law enforcement to listen to voice calls. We collect information such as the drone vendor and model, the drone and controlling device serial number, the geolocation of the drone, the location of the controller, and the most recent takeoff and home location. This is very much like the information required to be broadcast by manned aircraft, and which is now required under FAA's remote ID regulation to be broadcast by drones as well. And we use this information to further investigate when a crime involving a drone is suspected. As required in current law, DOJ would continue to have guidance that contains explicit protections for privacy and civil liberties and associated training. And state and local law enforcement, if empowered to engage in this activity, would be required to adhere to the same rules. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
I thank the witnesses for their opening statements. Members will now be recognized by order of seniority for 5 minutes of questioning. An additional round of questioning may be called after all members have been recognized, and also knowing that we have a second panel. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Let's just start with current events, and I'll ask an open-ended question. What is going on in New Jersey?
So, sir, the FBI and our Newark field office, along with the state and local partners there, the Bureau is actively investigating the situation you mentioned, just the unexplained sighting of drone activity over that part of New Jersey, including proximity to sensitive sites and areas of concern. So we do not attribute that to an individual or a group yet. We're investigating, but I don't have an answer of who's responsible for that, of one or more people that are responsible for those drone flights. But we're actively investigating. What the Bureau has done to aid our state and local partners is what we generally do, enlist the help of the interagency, enlist the help of the public. There's a tip line there, that 1-800-CALL-FBI, tips.fbi, for information from the public that could help us resolve this. It is concerning.
Is the public at risk? Is public safety at risk? Are we concerned that there are nefarious intentions that could cause either national security or a public safety incident that would put Americans at risk?
There's nothing that is known that would lead me to say that, but we just don't know, and that's the concerning part.
I think the fact that we have these unknown drones, UASs, that are flying over either critical or sensitive facilities is exactly why we're having this hearing. And Mr. Jones, actually for anybody on the panel, let me just say, we go back to last year, there were incidents, including Langley Air Force Base, where for over a week we had unknown drones flying over a very sensitive military installation with F-22s and other, weapon systems on the ground. And I think that was cause for concern. So from a DHS standpoint, either on a border mission or from an FBI or DOJ, you mentioned, Mr. Wheeler, we don't necessarily have the authorities we need. Why can't we take action against these drones that are flying over sensitive sites? Why are we not taking action against drones that are flying over sensitive sites?
So authority exists to mitigate a UAS in flight when authorized, and that could certainly apply to a sensitive site. I would be a little measured in speaking for the Department of Defense for those sites that are in question here. But I will say that we're, for the FBI, in a position, close liaison relationship with the Department of Defense and those areas that you mentioned, and will help in every way possible. But for securing those particular sites in this way, it is a DOD equity.
Mr. Jones, for the border, I was down in the RGV last year, and they told me that they had over 20,000 incidents just in a quarter of drones that were being operated by cartels. What's the danger along the southern border to our citizens, the safety of our citizens from drones?
Thank you, Chairman. So you touched on the volume of activity within the 500 yards of our contiguous border, in the south and even on the north, is staggering. We have deployed detection technology. You mentioned 20,000. The significant threat is counter surveillance. They are surveilling law enforcement activities. They're doing this 24/7, 365. And, historically, they've had to have high ground or terrain. Now everywhere's the high ground.
This is their high ground. They can see what's going on.
Exactly.
Do you have the authority to mitigate those physically or by other means?
So the Secretary has designated certain areas along our border as covered facilities. So yes, the capability exists and the authority exists in those covered areas.
Have those types of mitigations taken place? Are we actively mitigating?
We are actively mitigating, yes, sir.
And how many, my time is expiring, but how many events are we experiencing per year along the southern border?
So, for example, last year, if we look at 45,000 detections on the southwest, of those, 2,500 plus or minus actually made an incursion. So now we're talking about a very small subset. A lot of the surveillance is taking place outside of our jurisdiction in foreign airspace. That makes it particularly challenging for mitigation.
I bet we'll get back to these. My time has expired, and I recognize the ranking member for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you. I'll pick up on this same line of questioning. When a number of us visited the southern border last year, we heard from your officers about the challenges that drones were posing. And one question I have is, I understand they're being used primarily by the cartels for surveillance, to see where your officers are so that they can, more effectively traffic people, narcotics, firearms, et cetera, across the border. Do you see any evidence of the cartels using drones to actually move some of that contraband? Like, I'm thinking specifically of fentanyl. Are they using UASs to actually move fentanyl across the border?
We have yet to see fentanyl being moved via UAS. We have seen other narcotics, albeit in small quantities. From a cost model, it's not as effective for cartels because the payload capacity is so small, they have to make multiple trips. We have seen cocaine, we have seen heroin, we have seen methamphetamine, we've seen weapons. So there is a threat of moving contraband across our borders.
So The numbers, of course, are staggering. I think at one point in your written testimony, you alluded to periods of as many as 1,000 detections a week. But the number of mitigations at the southern border was 86 in fiscal year 23 and 60 in fiscal 24. So why so few as a percentage of the whole? What are the barriers that you're facing?
Well, again, many of these detections occur in foreign airspace, thereby we cannot mitigate. Actually, a very small percentage actually incur into the United States. So, for example, in the southwest border, only 5% of that large number actually affected an incursion. Of that, we have very strict criteria, and they met the criteria. So the 60 that we mitigated in FY24 actually met the criteria for mitigation.
So I'm going to ask about both the 5% and the 95% then. So in the 5% that do come into our airspace, is the criteria too narrow, to bring them down? Why again, so few?
Well, again, one of the things that's notable here is that those are not 2,500 unique identifiers. You have repeat offenders. So we take down or mitigate one drone. Of that large number, that could be responsible for hundreds of those detections.
I see. So these are events, not necessarily individual drones, these statistics.
That's correct.
Okay. So on the 95%, or really I guess 100%, even if you don't have the authority to bring them down, those that are over foreign airspace, do you still have the ability, the technological ability to track where the operators are and to alert in the Mexican or Canadian authorities as to where the operators are? And can you explain what that process is like?
Absolutely. And we do communicate directly with our foreign partners, and our communication is healthy. Our sharing of information is healthy. And so what you just described is exactly what we do.
And is it working? Does it happen? I mean, when you notify Mexican authorities, for example, that, hey, we've got a drone and we know where the operator is, I mean, are they pursuing the operators? Do you have success stories? Again, are there gaps that need to be filled in that process? Can you elaborate?
Well, again, we have to rely on so in the case of Government of Mexico, we have to rely on our Mexican partners to respond. A lot of times these are in areas that are not highly populated. They're very difficult to get to. They're also controlled by cartels. So by the time law enforcement responds, it's very challenging for them. It's not from lack of effort or lack of communication. It's just a very difficult environment.
Yeah. With the minute that I have left, I'll shift to Mr. Wiegmann. On the issue of special events, of SEER events, can you just elaborate a little bit more about why it is so important that the state and locals have expanded authorities, and what should the appropriate guardrails be, for those expanded authorities?
Yes. Each year, the FBI can cover a number of special events, and DHS covers some as well. So we're talking about big events like the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Indianapolis 500, that sort of thing. But obviously, those are not the only events that could be subject to an attack or a drone threat. You have many other football games, baseball games, soccer games, the World Cup. And if you add them all up, just focused on sporting events, even forgetting about, New York Times, New Year's celebration, there's all manner of events. So we can only cover a tiny fraction of those in any given year. And so if Congress gives the authority to state and locals to engage in the same activity, that vastly expands the scope of what counter-drone protection.
I'll just note for the record, thank you. I understand the need to expand that authority for the state and locals for these special events. I will just highlight, though, I think training is going to be very important in this, because there are plenty of people who fly drones at, high school football games and stuff for legitimate reasons. And we'll just need to make sure that the state and locals have the training to know how to kind of go after the bad guys without overly penalizing the good guys. But I take your broader point. And
absolutely.
I yield back.
That's a big part of it, the training.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Jimenez, for his.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that we face significant threats now from the technology that we have right now, but right around the corner, if not already here, is AI. And so some of the techniques that we use to mitigate current drones won't work on AI because they won't be piloted. They'll be just given a mission. They'll be given parameters of what to hit, and they'll hit it by themselves. They don't need to be piloted. Do we have any capabilities to actually go kinetic, actually knock these things down, either through, some kind of a projectile or with high energy that fries the systems? Do we have any of that available anywhere?
Thank you for the question. So without tipping our hand to our adversaries, I think it would probably be best, and we'd look forward to providing you a detailed briefing on our capabilities, kind of where our heads are at on, and we share your concern.
Yeah, because I think that not only concerns me in as far as Customs and Border Protection and our personnel, but also airports, large events, et cetera, where these drones can be used for really destructive purposes. And so I'm really worried about that. Mr. Jones, you said that you had legal authority to disable, to mitigate drones in certain areas. We have about a 2,000-mile-long border. So those areas, how many miles of the 2,000 do you actually have the authority to mitigate these drones?
Chairman, again, we're starting to get into an area I'm not comfortable with in an open forum, but we'd love to dock those details with you behind closed doors.
I take that to mean there's not too many miles, okay? So that's fair enough. Have you seen any kind of, we know that the cartels, especially the Mexican cartels, are working with the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party. The CCP provides the chemicals to the cartels who then produce the fentanyl that's killing thousands of Americans every single year. Do you see any link between, we see that link, do we see any links between the CCP, China, and the drones, the technology that's being used to surveil our border, and it's being used to help the cartels in their quest to transport people, drugs, guns, everything into the United States?
It's no secret that the preponderance of the UAS technology is manufactured in China, and the cartels are using that very technology. We share your concerns. There's a reason why we don't use Chinese drones. And whether they knowingly or unknowingly are potentially collecting information for the government of China.
That's it. That's all the questions I have. Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields. The chair recognizes Mr. Tanadar for his questioning.
Thank you, Chair Fluger. The operation of CUAS technologies to intercept drones is sensitive, as it generally requires seizure of property without a warrant. To do so, CUAS technology operators must hack into the signal used to control the drones, which often involves hacking into operators' cell phone or computer. As such, Congress has waived certain wiretapping and other privacy protections for agencies to carry out these activities. As DHS and DOJ have began to operate CUAS technologies, what have your agencies done to formally enshrine protections for privacy and civil liberties? Any one of you?
Sir, I can speak for the way that the FBI conducts the mission. We're very sensitive to those concerns. The information that is captured electronically from our technology that we use is just the information that has to do with the control of the drone, the flight, the telemetry data, if you will. Even if it is being operated by a personal device like a cell phone, for example, the technology that we use does not capture any other information from there, and we're very sensitive to how that is collected. And whatever that information that we collect, we don't maintain it if it's not threat, if it is not part of a case. If it is part of something that we investigate, then our regular guidelines of legal process and how we would maintain evidence apply. But we're very sensitive to privacy concerns and making sure we get it right and do it correctly.
All right. Thank you so much. Congress is currently considering authorizing a pilot program for state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement agencies to operate CUAS technologies. Expanding these authorities must be done carefully, as doing so requires waiving wiretapping protections and other critical protections to place to protect privacy and civil liberties. How can we ensure the operation of such technologies, potentially by a large number of law enforcement agencies, will be closely coordinated with and overseen by federal authorities? Mr. Wigman, most critically, how can we protect privacy and civil liberties?
Thank you for the question. So if the pilot program, the state and local pilot program that you mentioned is adopted, there would have to be, the law would require training for all state and local officials. It would also require them to follow the same procedures that my FBI colleague just mentioned in terms of the type of technology they can use, the type of data that they can collect, the rules of engagement, what type of facilities they can correct. So if they do it safely, they'd have to work with the FAA. All of their activities would have to be approved by DHS and Department of Justice working with FAA. So it's quite a labor-intensive kind of process that we're envisioning under the state and local pilot program to basically get state and local authorities up and running so that they can mirror and do the same things that, that we do at the federal level. And that includes protecting privacy and civil liberties.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How do I pronounce your name? Is it Weigman? Or
It's Wigman.
Wigman.
Yeah.
Mr. Wigman, I want to bore into this just a little bit more. So, and some of the questions have indicated and the answers indicate you got to be careful about revealing specific technological things. But I noted one thing when you were testifying, you said that the reason you need expanded authorities, I believe I got this right, is that the effective technologies to deal with this could violate laws on intercepting aircraft in flight and intercepting transmissions. Did I get that correct?
That's right.
And maybe you could just help me understand a little bit better. If you've got like a mass spectator event, which is one thing that's been raised, it seems to me, how do you have like and a lot, you've also said, several of you have made the point that, you know, how you intercept data to prevent intruding on privacy and only certain types of data. And I must tell you, that has a sophistication level I don't really understand. Why not just have a rule that anybody who flies a drone near a mass spectator event, the drone's going to be destroyed in the air? Is that something that it'd be hard to do? And then why do you need to intercept data in order to do that? If the object is there, destroy it.
So it's a good question. I think the way it works, as I understand it, and my colleagues can talk about this operationally, if you had, let's say, a football game, and you would have a perimeter, it would be declared as a temporary flight restricted area.
Okay.
So around that, you're going to have a buffer zone. You have an area where it's a no-go, and then you have a larger area around that where you might want to detect what's flying, and then you have a larger area around that where you might be tracking, but regular commercial drone use is okay. And so as they're getting closer and closer to the facility, you're detecting originally the signals to see what is that drone. You're trying to identify the drone. Oh, is that a UPS? Is that
like a long distance radar or something like that?
Exactly. So is that a UPS drone that's just delivering a package somewhere? Let it go on its way. Is it getting closer right into the zone where you're going to have to do something against it? So it's kind of a calibrated thing, and as you get closer and closer, then that's where you take the opportunity to use the technology to jam it. Is most frequently rather than destroy the drone. You're interfering with its navigation in a way that confuses it and requires it to land. And that's what they do in these scenarios to make it land somewhere rather than it's not the same as shooting it out of the sky is my understanding of how it works. You're instead using electronic things to bring it down. So that's essentially how it works.
Is the technology, and I've always been curious about that. I've asked that, first time I asked it in a hearing a couple of years ago, there's a Twitter of laughter throughout the room about naivety of thinking you could destroy the thing in the air, and I guess maybe if it leaves debris to fall or something, I could understand.
It could be dangerous also, I think.
Yeah.
If you were just to kinetically destroy it, I imagine there would be some hazards with that.
Should the average person looking at this, or the average congressman trying to understand it, believe that these technologies where you can use electronics to force the device to land are successful or have a high degree of reliability? Maybe I'll direct that to Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
So There's also non-destructive kinetic capabilities. So one thing from a law enforcement perspective we have to remember is that if we can capture a drone, there's a forensic capability that allows us to glean information.
Yeah.
And so that's important to us, as well as avoiding or minimizing any collateral damage. We have to be very careful in any application of force in public areas, responsible law enforcement, first do no harm.
Is any witness able to testify? Because what you've essentially laid out is we've had a series of short-term reauthorizations of what you had, the authorities that now exist, and the issues you want to expand the authorities. And I have concerns, especially after a variety of ways in which I think government authority has misused power to intercept information or learn information about the American people and has gone too far. What are the, can anybody describe what the hesitancy is and why they're not significant, or why they should be overruled and proceed with this more expanded authority? Mr. Wigman?
Hesitancy in adopting the expanded authority, or?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of hard for us to answer because we support expanding the authority. But I think that it's important to recognize when you talk about intercepting signals and so forth, as I mentioned in my opening statement, as Assistant Director Wheeler just mentioned, the types of signals that we're getting are the same types of information that is actually required to be broadcast and that anyone can pick up with a drone today, as the FAA's rules. So we're not talking, there is I guess a privacy interest, but it's the same type of information that we're now requiring, and it's a new regulation, but requiring drones to broadcast so that anyone can pick up, because it's really just about the communications between the drone and the controller, so that we can figure out where is that person, what's the registration, what's the model, how do we deal with it. So I think the privacy interest is limited.
My time has expired. Thank you very much. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the gentleman, our witnesses, for being here today. Very timely issue for all of us. I think your testimony and the questions show that a little bit of a tension here between private property, private rights, but I think the bigger one here is protecting public safety. A couple of times back home, I had the chance to see some drones flying over my house, looking in my backyard. Frustrating, angry, didn't have any kinetic weapons with me, so they came and went. But on a serious note, I'm home to Disneyland. Worldwide, it's still viewed as an American private enterprise symbol. I've got the Anaheim Ducks Arena, OC Vibe that's being built right now, the Anaheim Ducks, SoFi Stadium nearby, World Soccer Cup coming to our area very soon, Olympics coming soon. So target-rich environment, so to speak. And what you're saying, Mr. Wigman, specifically, you said that federal government does not have the bandwidth to really protect all of these sites, yet we're still not at a point where we can share the authority information with state, local, federal authorities. And I hope we don't have to wait for a federal law to be passed to get there. My local sheriff in Orange County has a fusion center. Fusion centers exist across the nation where federal, state, local, FBI, every agency collaborate, share information, because when it comes to these drones, time is of the essence. Authority to neutralize these things is of the essence. And I guess my question to each and every one of you, starting with Mr. Jones, do you know of any efforts right now to coordinate with our locals to begin sharing, creating the local authority to be more effective at protecting our citizens? Mr. Jones.
I can speak broadly and just outside of just counter UAS. We are working with our federal, state, and local partners on a daily basis. Whether it's counter fentanyl, counter UAS, just general public safety, they're our partners. We're all on the same team.
And I'm glad
we need the authority. We need the authority to designate, select state and local law enforcement, and then with approved equipment, and, just like my colleague stated.
We need a federal law.
Yes, we do.
Some of us here could probably do something like that, Mr. Chairman. Hope we can also, I didn't hear it, I know Mr. Jimenez talked a little bit about Mexico. Cooperation, any there? This is something that deals with both sides of the border.
Like I stated earlier, our relationship and our information sharing with Mexico is healthy, both at the local level through the U.S. Border Patrol Foreign Operations branches, as well as our communications with Mexico City.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wheeler, same question to you. Do you know of any efforts to coordinate past laws to help us work with the locals to protect our citizenry?
Sure. I would illustrate as maybe a good example for the situation in New Jersey and our Newark division we talked about earlier. The FBI Newark JTTF comprised of a lot of state and local officers that work on the JTTF are our people that are actively investigating this matter.
Are there any efforts to pass legislation that you're aware of to give the locals the authority to neutralize, monitor these aerial vehicles?
Well, that's not my purview for the legislation, but I can certainly tell you I support capacity building for
Mr. Wigman, my last 30 seconds.
That's what we're here for, Congressman. There's a Senate bill. There's a couple of House bills. All of them, to different degrees, would provide additional authority to the states, both at the minimum to do detection only, and then on a pilot program
beyond those bills
as well.
So that's what we're here beyond for. Those bills, any other authorities that are needed to be vested in the locals to do their job?
I think those bills are where we should focus, and coming up with something that's will work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm out of time. I yield.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. It's been referenced that there are federal laws against intercepting aircraft or intercepting communication signals, and it's been cited today regarding absence of a specific federal law authorizing local law enforcement to use existing technologies to mitigate against an unmanned aerial system threat or a drone threat. Let me say that, Mr. Chairman, I believe that the 10th Amendment already extends such rights to the sovereign states. And let me say that the current law, the current federal law that authorizes specific federal law enforcement agencies to use existing and emerging technologies to mitigate against unmanned aerial systems. Yes, that authorizes those specific federal agencies to deploy that technology, but in no way does the current law prohibit the rights of the sovereign state to authorize their own state and local law enforcement to use existing technologies and emerging technologies in a law enforcement capacity. Mr. Wigman, is it against the law for one American to strike another American? Yes, it is. It's not a trick question. Is that against the law?
Obviously, it depends on the context.
Of course, there's a general law against that.
Yeah.
But is it allowed for a law enforcement officer who has probable cause to detain you or arrest you? Is it allowed for him to strike you in order to effect that arrest? Yes, of course he can. Is there a law against me crashing my car into yours purposefully? Yes, there is. But Mr. Jones, are you familiar with the pit maneuver? Of course, law enforcement has been using this for decades. We use our vehicle to crash into a suspect vehicle in a particular manner reflective of our training in order to effect the arrest. We're using the current training standards and the technology of our vehicle that we have deployed to effect that arrest. That's not a vehicle crash. It's a law enforcement action. that's broadly known. Everyone knows it's against the law for one American to shoot another one. But a law enforcement officer, in order to effect arrest, if he needs to escalate to lethal force, we know a law enforcement officer has that authorization through federal and state laws. So, yes, there's plenty of laws. You guys love to cite these laws that exist that we cannot intercept an aircraft. We understand that. But if intercepting the aircraft is a law enforcement action, which using existing technology to mitigate against an unmanned aerial threat, Mr. Chairman, these technologies exist, and absolutely our local and state law enforcement entities should have access to the same technologies that we seem to be very protectively reserving for only select federal agencies. So, Mr. Jones, you had stated earlier, good sir, and thank you for wearing the badge, my brother. You had stated earlier that yes, you're deploying these systems, but please clarify for America that there are great restrictions on actually deploying the technology to land a drone. You're using the technology primarily to track criminal drones, but you're not using that technology primarily to land drones, which is what the technology does. Am I correct in that assessment or not, Mr. Jones?
Well, both are true. We are using technology to track the drones. We are also using technology and electronic means to intercept and land the drone at a place of our discretion.
And give us the numbers by percentage. If you track 100 drones, how many are you landing?
Well, like I stated earlier, for FY24 Southwest border, we actually landed 60 of them, mitigated 60 of those aircraft.
60 of the 45,000 that you encountered? Well, there you go. That's what I'm saying. You're using the technology to track, but you're not using the technology to fully mitigate. So this is what we've been talking about for a year, Mr. Chairman. This technology, by 10th Amendment right, belongs to the sovereign states, and they should be allowed to fully deploy it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chairman. And, sometimes I feel like I'm in the twilight zone up here. Like month after month, people come before us, they testify, and you don't get a lot of answers. And it's concerning, it's frustrating. You're telling me we don't know what the hell these drones are in New Jersey are? Is that correct?
That's right.
It's crazy. I mean, that's crazy. That's madness that we don't know what these drones are. You're telling me that a lot of these, Mr. Jones, you're telling me that 90%, 95% of these drones along the U.S.-Mexico border, we can't interact because they're not in U.S. territory?
That is correct. A large proportion of them stay in foreign airspace.
I'll tell you what, there are a lot of Americans that are very frustrated right now that are essentially questioning, where are my taxpayer dollars going? You know, this Doge craze that's kind of starting to take hold, this is very real. I mean, this is going to come. People are going to have to come before the carpet, and they're going to have to explain every single line item. What do you do here? What does this get? And so let me ask a very specific question. Mr. Wheeler, how much of the FBI budget goes towards counter-UAS?
So the technical part of operational budget that I have within the critical incident response groups, just less than $500,000.
500,000? That's nothing. Well, why is it so low?
Well, I don't.
And I wonder we don't know what the hell is going on. 500,000.
So that number doesn't capture the FBI Newark investigation, for example. The budget allocation for what we're doing investigatively is not captured in that number, but for the technology we use and the way we deploy it, just under 500,000.
We want to help you. I mean, this is a committee. The chairman's putting this together because we want to know these topics. The American people deserve to know the truth on this, and we also deserve to have actions on it. And if it's a budget issue, no problem. But it's also what is our money getting us? Clearly, not a whole lot. And something needs to change, though. I'm trying to figure out what that something is. It just, month after month, it's the same old, same old. From a CBP standpoint, Mr. Jones, do you know what the current budget of CBP is for counter UAS?
I can tell you that direct appropriations for counter UAS was zero last year.
Zero. So
CBP
yeah,
took it out of Hyde, and we will continue to take it out of Hyde. Now, I can't tell you exactly what that number is. I have a general ballpark, but we can discuss that. I provide that as a get back to you.
Another committee that I sit on is appropriations. So I see a lot of things through the lens of dollars and cents. If you're putting zero on the board, you're probably not going to get a lot of success. And it's not fair. You know, a lot of people talk about the border. I represent the border, nearly half of the southern border. I've been out there with these agents in the middle of nowhere that are essentially alone and unafraid, you know, making do with what they have. It's not fair to them, and ultimately it's not fair to us to have them combat against some of these drones that are happening with a zero budget. I mean, it's just madness. So I guess I have other line of questioning, but I don't want to embarrass anyone. I would just say, I would be very interested in partnering up and figuring out what we need to do in order to find and answer some of these questions. What resources do you need? The technology is already out there. Drones, this isn't new. Drones are 100 years old. This isn't state of the art. Drones are old technology. The fact that we don't know what's flying in our airspace is only the tip of the iceberg, what's to come. We have to fix this. And I want to partner up to fix this. Part of that is finding out the proper resources you need, training, authorities. I get the authorities piece, but it's a cradle to grave type of situation. It cannot just be, the answer can't be we don't know. And the answer can't be zero. I mean, we got to do better than that. And if we don't, I suspect not good things will happen. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming before us and testifying. I look forward to partnering with all your agencies. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. D'Esposito.
Thank you, Chairman. And I sort of feel the same way as my good friend, Mr. Gonzalez. This is like deja vu. We've been talking about this for a long time and seems to be not getting much answers. I mean, the chairman and I visited New York City probably close to 2 years ago. We met with the leadership in the NYPD. It was probably one of the most rapidly growing drone use in the country. And my vision on jurisdiction of taking down drones may be different from others here. But first, I think it's important to quickly focus on stuff back at home. I mean, these drones over New York and New Jersey, flying over critical infrastructure, flying over some of, whether it's the Verrazano Bridge or others, I mean, I have to agree with my colleagues. The fact that we continue to say that we don't know what they are, we don't know what they're doing. I mean, the American people are looking at us and they think that we're lying to them because they think, how could you possibly not have answers to drones flying over some of the most critical airspace in the country? So, I mean, if we're expecting the American people to believe in the information that we're giving them, I think we do need to do better. And that's none of your fault. I mean, the fact that there's only a $500,000 in drone expenditures appropriations. I mean, that's absolutely insane, and I hope that it's something that my colleagues work on. But as many have already pointed out, drones continue to rapidly advance and become more readily available. Along with the expansion, threats from drones being used by bad actors have only increased, as all of you have mentioned. Right now, counter-UAS authorities are restricted from local law enforcement agencies, leaving it largely in the hands of federal agencies. So, Mr. Wigman or Mr. Wheeler, very simple questions. Do federal agencies have the ability to assist local law enforcement agencies with their counter-UAS capabilities everywhere and every time it's needed?
Not today. That's what we're seeking from the Congress.
Yep.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Are there events and places that would benefit from counter-UAS capabilities that federal agencies are simply not able to cover?
Absolutely. There are.
Yes.
All right. In your submitted statement, you both said, quote, we need to empower state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement agencies across the country, which are primarily responsible for keeping our citizens safe, at the local level to take the steps needed to protect their communities from the emergency threat. This past year, right in my district, in the middle of my district in Nassau County, we hosted the 2024 International Cricket World Cup, including the India-Pakistan match. While there were drone-related threats from ISIS ahead of the tournament, the federal government was only able to assist with their counter-UAS capabilities for a small portion of the tournament. What is the current impact of local law enforcement not having these authorities? And I'll leave that to any of you.
Well, I think that's the main thing is the capacity. We need more capacity to be able to do the mission, and we strongly support state and local jurisdictions having that capacity and the authority and the ability to help.
Right. And I think I'm sorry, Mr. Woodman, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's right. And just to answer your question also, Mr. Congressman Gonzalez as well. I mean, I think all of us on the panel share your view that we need to do more and more resources. If we do get the authorities, we will certainly need more resources. Right. Even if state and locals are doing it, that will require training and additional work and approval on our end. So more resources, more authorities, those are all things that we would support.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point down and to spread the message, because I think there's a lot of false information being spread about law enforcement agencies trying to say that, well, they don't want this added enforcement. They don't want to take on this responsibility. I mean, we had a hearing in this room just hours ago where the commissioner of the Nassau County Police Department, Patrick Ryder, was here, and he has been advocating in his position as commissioner, as his position as a member of the Major City Chiefs, that this is something that local law enforcement agencies, not only do they need it, they want it. And I think that we have the opportunity throughout this country to make sure that law enforcement agencies, there is some sort of consolidation. There are many law enforcement agencies that border one another that could help each other deal with this, I'll call it a burden, but this added burden. But they're willing to do it. Why? Because it makes sure that people can be kept safe. We can make sure that in instances like the World Cup back in my district, or as Mr. Jimenez was talking about the summer games in Miami. I mean, to depend on the federal government, and the federal government is telling us, well, we can only help you some of the time, even when you have threats from ISIS, I mean, that's a huge problem. And it's one that we need to address not only here today, but moving forward. And Mr. Chairman, my time has expired, but thank you for continuing to bring this to light.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing today. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming today. I got an article right here, mystery drone spotted over New York, New Jersey, prompt calls for federal investigation. I believe this was Breitbart News. I want to start with you, Mr. Wheeler from the FBI. What can you tell us about what you guys do know?
So the public reports and what we have from eyewitness sightings, some of those very credible police personnel and others are what we describe as unidentified drones. We do not know the particular specifics of what those drones are. Some are described as being slightly larger than a commercial available drone. Fixed wing as well as rotary. We have helped analyze with our partners video and pictures of what those look like, what have been submitted. Part of that is these over 3,000 tips from the public, and to look at that. But as I previously stated, we don't know the people responsible behind that, and that's what we're working on.
Yeah. What did you say the FBI was spending on counter drone?
My budget that would specifically include the technology that we use.
Is it $500,000?
It's $500,000.
What? That doesn't seem nearly adequate. Why do you feel like there isn't a push within the FBI to keep up with modern warfare and modern threats?
So
what is the budget for the FBI right now?
Roughly $11 billion.
Okay, why do you think as warfare changes, and as you know, sir, warfare is changing drastically right now overseas, especially with Ukraine and Russia and the development of drone technology, why isn't the FBI taking this threat more seriously? And that's obviously reflected by the budget that you guys have assigned to counter drone technology.
I have a limited capability that is embedded within our emerging threats unit for surveillance issues. That allocation of resources, that research, that operational deployment of our capability is what we have today. I would imagine that this would grow over time.
What do you think that some of these terrorist cells that might be in the country right now, or maybe even outside of our borders, what do you think that they're looking at when they see a hearing like this and they see that you guys still, after almost a month, don't know who these drones are? What do you think that they're thinking?
So I would be measured in how we speak about our capability and what our limitations and capacity is. However, I'll say to you that it's not as good as I wish it was, and we'll continue to work to make it better.
Yeah, well, when you're only spending $500,000 a year, it's probably not going to be very good, is it?
The only thing I would say about that is that this is an enterprise-wide problem. It's not just a technological problem, that most of that $11 billion budget for the FBI gets after threats to Americans, this being one of them. And the way we apply resources, personnel, operational, all of that to include technology to get after a threat that would threaten American lives, I don't think that $500,000 for the technology part of it adequately captures our commitment to protecting Americans.
I want to shift real quick because you guys have been talking about using electronic warfare to counter some of these drones. What about drones that aren't susceptible to counter warfare, like your fiber optic drones? What are you guys doing about those? I'll start with you, Mr. Jones.
So all options are on the table right now. We are exploring kinetic options.
You know,
complement the electronic.
You can buy those right now, and they're really not that expensive. Are you aware of that, Mr. Jones?
I'm aware there's a lot of different technologies out there. We have experimented with some that have been very successful.
Yeah. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. The gentlelady from New York, Ms. Maliatakis, is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Pfluger. Thank you all for being here today. I just want to follow up on what my colleague asked regarding what happened in New York and New Jersey. These drones, unmanned aircrafts, have also flown over my district. A number of constituents have seen them over a power plant in Brooklyn. They were coming over the Verrazano Bridge. And I will remind everyone or explain to everyone here that Verrazano Bridge connects Staten Island and Brooklyn, and on the Staten Island side, you have Fort Wadsworth, which is a U.S. Coast Guard sector New York base. And then in the Brooklyn side, right on the other side of the Verrazano Bridge, you have Fort Hamilton, which is a U.S. Army installation. And so it is very concerning to me that we have these objects. We're not sure if they're drones or unmanned aircrafts, but they are flying over sensitive infrastructure and facilities. And the fact that we don't know what they are or who's behind them or what they're doing is very concerning to me, particularly in a post-Chinese spy balloon world. Okay, the fact that this administration allowed for a Chinese spy balloon to go across the country over multiple military installations is very concerning, and that we could potentially be having this happen again it's like astounding to me that this is even happening without any type of intervention. You say it's no known threat, but is there still a possibility of there being a threat? At the end of the day, that's what my constituents want to know.
Yes, I am cognizant, and we all are in the FBI, of what this threat can look like. Anyway, across the spectrum of sophisticated state actors, adversaries that want to hurt us, all the way through counterterrorism matters, cyber, WMD, criminal, all the way down to a nuisance drone that could cause harm. So that's the wide spectrum that concerns me every day.
Okay.
I'll just mention it concerns me that we don't know the answer to your question yet.
And are you working with the Pentagon, with FAA, with DHS, with your partners to try to identify this? Because I don't put it all on just the FBI. I think this is, I mean, what is Homeland Security doing? Do you have any idea? Have you?
I wouldn't speak for another department, but I will say that the way we do business is extremely collaborative in the interagency, and especially with our state and local partners.
So who's taking the lead here on this particular issue to identify these drones and aircrafts?
Well, we have an investigation open predicated on a idea that there's unsafe operation in the airspace, which is a federal violation that we have some jurisdiction for. But it would help us know sort of what lane this falls in when we know the people that are responsible and what this is all about, to your point earlier. And we're actively investigating and would like to answer those questions, but I don't have a better answer.
And what if they were carrying chemical weapons or something? We just don't, I mean, this could be a much worse conversation we could be having right now, because these things have been flying all over New York, New Jersey, over military installations. I don't know, I don't know what's going on there, but these agencies need to figure it out and try to get to the bottom of what's going on. I think it's very concerning. Is there a possibility, if hopefully it is not a threat, is it a possibility it would fall under this System Assessment and Validation of Emergency Responders program, the SAVER program? This is a program under Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology, where they are testing various technology for search and rescue, disaster response, and it could be part of a law enforcement assessment. You think that's a possibility? Because my Army base doesn't know about it. My NYPD doesn't know about it. So I guess my question is, why wouldn't the local authorities know if this was part of a testing of security technologies for first responders?
So I don't know that to be the case,
Okay.
and I couldn't really comment on that.
Okay, well, just again, I would love to speak to you offline at some point and maybe share some information with you, but I would really just urge if you could speak to your colleagues and counterparts in these other departments, and because we need to get to the bottom of what's going on here. And if it is something that is not nefarious and is one of part of these public safety applications that are being tested, they need to coordinate with the local authorities. So my guys in New York NYPD, they know that it's not a threat.
I would agree.
All right, thank you.
Gentlelady yields. This will be the last questioning from for the first panel. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Smith.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman, Chairman, both of you, for allowing me to sit in on this hearing. I've been in Congress 44 years, and I have lost track of the number of times when we seemingly did not adequately assess a threat. I had one of my service members from the Marines in the barracks in Lebanon when that terrible, horrible deed was committed by Iran. Actually, after we got hit in Dar es Salaam and in Nairobi in 1998 by Al-Qaeda, I chaired all the hearings. We had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff come and testify as Admiral Crow. And they kept saying, everyone, no one thought that Al-Qaeda would hit there. Maybe in the Middle East, but not there. I wrote a bill called the Embassy Security Act. It was signed into law. I added it to an appropriations bill, big, thick bill, but it was all about setbacks and Mylar on the windows, a lot of good things. And it did mitigate, I think, some of the concerns there. But we always seem to miss something, and I'm very concerned that we're missing something here. I've raised the issue, as has my colleagues, Maliotakis and others in New Jersey and New York, about these drone sightings. So last night, I was on the beach in Island State Park in Ocean County with the sheriff. He has been working it every single night. He's got his own tethered drones chronicling. One of his officers 2 nights ago saw 50 drones come in off the ocean right there. So we thought maybe they'll replicate it. They didn't, but we thought it was a possibility. Last night, we had a number of other people there, including a commanding officer from the Coast Guard, who said that one of their 47-foot motor lifeboats was followed by between 12 and 30 of these drones as they went through the water, followed right behind them. You know, and I said, what's the rules of engagement? I mean, you do it if you're fighting against a narco trafficker or something. And they said, we don't know, we don't have any. So I did reach out to the commanding officer at the Joint Base, which is also in my district, and talked to him, had a very good conversation, Colonel Anthony Smith, Joint Base Fort Dix McGuire, the 87th Air Wing, Air Base Wing today. And I said, I know you have the capability, you've put out press releases, to identify and bring down drones. Why can't you deploy them, at least to the ocean? Bring one of these down, find out who's doing it. They have the capability. They said, well, we don't have the authority, only within the parameters of our base. Well, there's a national interest here. Our jets fly over the ocean all the time for training, so that perimeter is larger. So I did write Secretary Lloyd Austin asking that capability that may be sitting in a closet somewhere, I know they use it all the time, but bring it out. And I'm not saying you got to share it with the sheriffs. It'd be nice. Just do it yourself in the interest of the American public. So I would ask if you would echo that request. I mean, DOD's got the capability, and maybe Homeland Security does as well. When we had a Zoom meeting with Secretary Mayorkas, our governor put it together, and I appreciated that. But I asked them, why can't we just track where they go to? Seemingly they're going out to sea, to something, a ship. We don't know for sure, but they come in off from the ocean. So the question really is, can't we just get DOD to share? In my first term, DOD and VA did a great thing, the DOD-VA sharing agreement for healthcare capabilities. It was fantastic. Why can't the DOD share this with Homeland Security, with FBI and others, so that you can go out and find out who they are? Maybe it's China. I chair the China Commission, and I've had 115 hearings on it. I'm barred from going there now. China is, and I'm on their hit list. Xi Jinping is a monster. Look what Putin's doing. They're all capable of doing horrible things to our people, and now they're threatening my good friend and colleague from New York and, of course, New Jersey big time. So let's go get that DOD capability and find out and put to rest the question, who is it? We can bring one down tomorrow. Your thoughts?
Sir, I'd just say I share your concern. I share a lot of frustration, and I'm more than willing to continue working with the Department of Defense to try to get better.
Again, if they don't have the authority, they can do it on an emergency basis. Just send that capability out to the ocean, to the beach, because they're coming in every day. Figure out which one it is and bring them down. And then retrieve it and find out what's going on. And as my good friend Congresswoman Malliotakis said, the thing with the balloon was mind-boggling. Over our bases, and we didn't see that was a threat. Well, this, I think, is a very serious threat. And so please, if you could, get DOD to share that capability. Maybe Homeland has it. I don't know. Maybe you have it somewhere. But I know DOD has it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Gentlemen's time has expired. I thank the witnesses for your valuable testimony, for being here today, and for the members and the questions. We will now dismiss this first panel, take a brief 2 to 3 minute recess while we arrange for the second panel of witnesses.